My name is Stavros Pantzaris. I'm the country managing partner of EY in Cyprus. Earlier this morning, we heard from the Minister of Transport, Communications and Work, as well as from the Deputy Shipping Minister, about the country's potential of becoming a regional maritime logistics and energy hub. Well, it is true that the oil and gas developments over the last few years created a positive momentum for Cyprus. Eni and Total have recently completed a successful drill in Block 6, and Eni is expected to engage into a new drill later on this month, while ExxonMobil and its partner, Qatar Petroleum, are already planning their drilling activity on Block 10 towards the end of this year. These global energy clients are continue to invest in seismic studies and are planning to use the marine and oil and gas services facilities in the multi-purpose terminal in the Limassol port, which is currently operated by DPWorld. At the same time, considerations are currently being made for expanding the port at the Vassiliko area, where VTTI invested in a €300 million project back in 2014 in establishing an oil storage and management facilities terminal, which is often referred to as the Mediterranean Energy Hub. Well, all these developments, together with the regional partnerships with neighboring countries, lead to the development of Cyprus as an energy, maritime, and logistics hub, and surely offer investors with many business and investment opportunities. At this point, let me introduce to you our today's panelists, which comprise distinguished guests from key international players with many years of experience in the maritime, logistics, and energy sectors. I have to note that earlier this morning, I received a call from Mr. Alessandro Barberis, the CEO of Eni, who informed me that considering the current developments in the exclusive economic zone of Cyprus, he's engaged into various other meetings and discussions, so he asked me to convey his apologies to all of you for not being able to join this discussion. So to my left, to introduce our panelists, is Mr. Charles Meaby, General Manager of DPWorld Cyprus Operations. To his left is Mr. Varnavas Theodossiou, Lead Country Manager of ExxonMobil Exploration and Production in Cyprus. To his left is Mr. Panayiotis Christodoulou, Administrations Director of SCF Management Services in Cyprus. And last but not least, to his left we have Mr. George Papanastasiou, the CEO of VTT Vassiliko. Right, before we engage into our discussion, I would first like to present a 2-minute video which highlights some additional important and sensitive issues that provide food for thought for the energy companies. Can we please play the video? thought-provoking questions have been put on the table. How do we make energy more accessible, affordable, and secure? What technologies will lead our transformation to a low-carbon society? What will be the energy mix in 20 years from now? Will the oil age come to an end? Well, if this comes true, it will not be because we've run out of oil. Something better and cheaper will come along. And the question is, how will the oil and gas companies of today become the energy companies of tomorrow? Well, I do hope that all these points have set the scene for our discussion. Let me, without no further ado, let me start with Mr. Charles Meaby from DPWorld, Cyprus, for his introductory remarks and for his views regarding the opportunities for investment and support in our region. Charles, how does the current logistics space assist the international oil companies during the exploration phase?
Started operations almost exactly 1 year ago, on the 29th of January last year. Our job is to manage the area you see there in the Limassol port. It's more than 300,000 square meters, 1.6 kilometers of deep water berths, quays, and we do all the management of the terminal, the safe movement of cargoes from vessel through the terminal and out. What have we done in terms of organising the terminal? We've cut it into three aspects. The passenger aspect, where the new passenger terminal opened last summer. The green area you can see on the slide there is for the general cargoes, domestic cargoes, roll on, roll off, bulks, etc. And we've designated a very large swathe of land, more than 100,000 square metres, to support the offshore oil and gas activities. And the quay length there is more than 400 metres, so you can accommodate 4 platforms for 4 vessels. In fact, we can double bank, so you could get 8 vessels there. In that area, we've again master planned it such that we can support 3 offshore explorations at any one time. We've taken that through a full permitting process, environmental impact assessment for the long term, and that we've worked very closely with the environmental authorities for the permitting, with the local municipalities, etc., and those permits have been completed. The area you can see there is split into effectively A, B, and C, and then some spare land in D and E. It also includes covered space and bonded areas, where we've bonded with the customs authority so goods could be held in transit. We've already had some success working with various different companies, and we hope to work with more. There's a few names up there that are operating within the multi-purpose site today, and you heard from Stavros that the first E&I drilling that was successful in the Block 6 earlier this year was supported by a shore base in Limassol. And there's some photographs of that activity. It's pretty, when you go and see it, it's pretty basic. It consists of open space, a bulk handling plant, pipe storage plant, and equipment to load safely on and off the vessels. We've also been supporting other activities with respect to offshore development. So the Zohr fields, where the pipelines for taking the gas from the Zohr field to shore, the pipes landed Limassol, held here, reloaded, and also the pipe laying vessel, which you can see in that picture, was mobilized in Limassol. So what do we do? Well, we support. We're the enabler. We're here to help lead the trade, to provide the platform for them to undertake their activities, to ensure that the terminal is safe, secure, well managed to invest. We train our staff to international standards needed, and that's our job. So thank you.
Thank you, Charles. We'll come back to you later on. Moving now to Mr. Varnavas Theodossiou from ExxonMobil for his introductory remarks and for giving us an update on Exxon's exploration plans in the region. Varnava, what role can Cyprus play in the region for the commercialization of hydrocarbon resources?
Thank you, Stavros. I can get this to work. I did. Let me take you through a few slides from our global energy outlook, which represents our view of energy demand through 2040. We use this to support our business in making long-term investments, together with our partners and with the host governments. So as the global population increases by about 30%, from currently 7.3 billion to 9.1 billion in 2040, and the middle class doubles in the next 15 years, without efficiency improvements, global energy demand would have a significant increase. You can see the dotted line on the chart. But actual demand is expected to increase by only about, if I can use the word only, 25% to 2040, reflecting large savings due to efficiency improvements. And this demand growth will come from non-OECD nations, where energy use will rise by about 40%, led by China, India, and mainly other Asia-Pacific countries. The non-OECD share of global energy demand reaches about 70% in 2040, as efficiency gains and modest economic growth help keep the OECD energy demand relatively flat, as you can see on the right-hand side chart. So how will this energy mix evolve? Growth in global energy demand will be led by electricity generation mainly, as the largest and fastest growing demand sector. About 55% of the world's energy demand growth over the next quarter century will be tied to power generation to support our increasingly digital and plugged-in lives. So as a consequence of this trend, there will be a large uptick in demand for the types of fuels and energy that are used to generate electricity. So notably for less carbon-intensive sources, such as the natural gas, nuclear, solar, and wind. Oil, as you can see on the right-hand side chart, will still remain the world's primary energy source through 2040, meeting about 1/3 of that demand. Natural gas will grow the most of any energy type by about 45%, reaching 1/4 of all demand and displacing coal as the second largest fuel. Coal, of course, will still remain important in some parts of the world, but loses significant share as the world transitions towards energy sources with lower emissions. Lastly, nuclear and renewables will be growing strongly, contributing close to 40% of the incremental energy supplies needed to meet that demand growth. Turning now to natural gas, and particularly into LNG, we see that Europe and Asia Pacific account for about 90% of the global gas imports. Specifically for LNG, global trade rises more than 2.5 times from 2015 to 2040, with the rapidly growing economies in Asia Pacific accounting for over 2/3 of that growth. Although we expect energy demand in Europe to essentially peak, pipe gas and LNG import will grow to offset production decline and the shift from the coal. So you can still see that on the right-hand side chart on that slide. So subject to successful exploration programs, commercialization options for Cyprus gas could be well positioned to supply markets in Europe and probably beyond. Furthermore, if adequate discoveries warrant, an LNG plant in Cyprus could be one of the lead options. So that takes us to the last slide. I would like to provide to you a short update of our exploration activities in Cyprus. So together with our partner, Qatar Petroleum, we are planning drilling operations with an objective to drill 2 back-to-back exploration wells in Block 10, starting in the second half of 2018. We have acquired
3D seismic data. We have processed them, evaluated them, and we have identified already the top targets. The well designed, the baseline surveys, and the permitting are well underway. We are engaged into various contracting activities, basically for the drill ship. We would be able, I hope, to announce the drill ship in a couple of weeks. Short base and other activities which are progressing as per plan. That's all. Thank you for now.
Thank you, Varnavas. We do look forward to closely following the drilling activity by Exxon in the area. Moving now to Mr. Panayiotis Christodoulou from Sovcomflot for his initial remarks as regards Sovcomflot's investments on the island to date, and for sharing his views on any new business opportunities in the Cyprus oil and gas sector, such as maybe the potential of using a floating storage and regasification unit, FSRU, for pumping gas to the power station at Vassiliko. Panayiotis.
Thank you, Stavros. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. We are Unicorn Management Services Cyprus Limited, and we are operating in the island for the last 27 years. We are specializing in the ship management of vessels that are involved in the transportation of hydrocarbons. We belong to the Sovcomflot Group, which is the largest Russian shipping company. It's a global leader in the transportation of maritime transportation of hydrocarbons, as well as servicing support and offshore production of oil and gas. The fleet size is about 150 vessels with a combined deadweight of more than 13 million and an average age of 8 years. During the years of operation, Sovcomflot has accumulated unique competencies in the energy shipping, being involved in the various projects, especially in the harsh environments of Arctic. A number of these projects are stated on this slide. However, I will go through a couple of them, not to waste the time, productive time. First one is the Sakhalin 1 project. This was the first time Sovcomflot was involved in the transportation from the Arctic region, the offshore project. This involved the development of unique Arctic shuttle tankers that were able to lift crude oil from the gas tree around the world, around the year. So the icy conditions was not a barrier. And proudly we can say that from 2006 until today, we have successfully lifted 100 million tons of crude oil from the gas tree. Another project is again associated with Sakhalin, and is the development build of unique ice-breaking supply and standby vessels. These vessels serve almost all the needs of the offshore platforms of Sakhalin Energy and ExxonMobil. Yet another Arctic shuttle tanker, Sturman Arpanov. It was awarded as the ship of 2016, and is also involved in the harsh climatic conditions of the Arctic. We also have two modern marine 3D seismic vessels, and last but not the least, we have the Christodoulou, which is the first ice-breaking energy carrier in the world. It was the winner of the Global Energy Award last year. We are interested in Cyprus because we have the expertise. We see that there are a lot of developments here, and we can contribute to that. Currently, we are supervising the construction of a modern FSRU, which we think will be able to be deployed serving the gas needs of Cyprus. Thank you.
Thank you, Panayiotis. Moving now to Mr. George Papanastasiou from VTT Vassiliko for his introductory remarks. George, on what grounds has VTTI chosen Cyprus? And also, what is your view on the potential of Cyprus to develop into an oil trading hub?
Thank you, Stavros. Thank you to the organizers as well for inviting us here to present what we believe is the biggest infrastructure investment in Cyprus over the recent years. It's an energy infrastructure. It's 300 million investment. And it's equity which has been brought, it was imported equity, and it's exactly what Cyprus needed at the time that we started the investment back in 2012. In fact, we employ 48 locals, highly academically, highly knowledgeable people, and we developed internally in the organization the knowledge in order to run a terminal which we call in the system in VTTI, which is a global group, the Mediterranean's oil storage hub, and we believe it's developing into a hub for the region. What you see here, by the way, is let me just go back if I can go back. Okay, this is the real jetty, which at the time we had 4 vessels that they were doing different things. They were moving products oil products between the vessels. We were blending off-spec products onshore and pushing them back onto the other vessels, which they are on the other side of the jetty. In fact, the terminal is not just an oil storage terminal. It's a terminal where we blend products, we correct specifications of oil, and we get products from the Black Sea, which usually you cannot trade in the European Union. We correct them, and then the traders, they move them to the European Union markets. We do not own the molecules, just to make it clear. We own the facilities, we have the expertise, and the molecules, meaning the oil, they belong to our customers. We operate like a hotel where we get the residents, people in and out of this terminal. What you see here is the terminal itself. It consists of 28 tanks. The total capacity is 544,000 cubes, which is in one terminal is higher than the total capacity that Cyprus has in total. We can store products, all white products as we call them, or clean products, which is gasoline, diesel. We cannot store at this point in time fuel oil, which is what vessels they currently burn, because that's the phase 2 for our terminal. That's the phase, it's an expansion development that we plan for the next years. You know, for our visitors, Vassiliko, VTT Vassiliko is based between Limassol and Larnaca. It's well located, and in the future, if and when the shipping sanctions are lifted by Turkey imposed on Cyprus, you understand that this terminal sits very well in the south part of Turkey in order to supply Turkey from our facilities, our traders to supply Turkey from our facilities. Why Cyprus? And this is what I'm going to show here, because that's a question that Stavros keeps asking me. You see, in the Eastern Mediterranean, we have product fuel oil which is coming out of the Black Sea. You know that the Bosphorus Straits, they are shallow waters. You get the products out in small shipments, and in order to go to Asia for burning, you need to collect it, and you do the so-called built-in bulk. So you collect it to a oil storage terminal, and then a vessel out of Asia comes and picks it up from Cyprus. Of course, for this red product, the fuel oil, we do not have currently the capacity in order to service this particular flow of this product. Middle distillates, they are coming out from the Middle East. The huge refineries, mostly in Saudi Arabia, in the Red Sea, they take products to Europe. The reason is middle distillates is diesel. You understand that Europe is mostly diesel driven, and there is quite a large flow of middle distillates towards the west, which is Europe. For gasoline, there is Europe is long in gasoline production, and then you see the arrow which moves from left to right, which is west to east, and then it goes to Middle East. In fact, the oil terminal sits very well to support all these arrows. In the future, We expect that this middle distillate, the orange arrow, will increase considerably simply because we see in Europe shutting down of refineries, and we see more development in the Middle East with bigger refineries. So the future, we believe that it will be a bigger arrow coming out from the Middle East for all products, not just middle distillates. Of course, there is lots of ship-to-ship happening in the open sea near Cyprus. We have the Suez Canal nearby. You understand that ship-to-ship means two vessels, a mother vessel and a sister vessel, gets next to each other, and there are oil movements between the two vessels. There is a trade which touches 10 million approximately tons a year of exchange. So 10 million of oil products in quantity, they exchange hands in the open sea near Cyprus. So this is a business, a potential that we can get it on the jetty of VTTV.
Thank you, George. We do look forward. Well, before I open the discussion to the floor, and you may start thinking about possible questions to our panelists, let me ask a couple of questions. Charles, what are the major challenges that you foresee over the next couple of years, and how are you addressing these challenges?
For us in the terminal, we've got plenty of space at the moment. I think as the exploration continues, there may come a point when there's going to be a premium on space. But right now, there's ample space, so let's hope that that becomes a problem. I think that'll be a fantastic thing if it does. I think the challenge also will be in terms of people to ensure that they are trained at the right standards and meet the needs of the IOCs in terms of accreditation and these things. That's a very important piece in the picture. So those people who are doing the reading and the loading and the offloading are of the right standard. And then, of course, ensuring that we have the equipment. So the right types of equipment and plant. We can base the terminal around the needs, and I think that comes around to good pre-warning, pre-planning with the operators. Actually, what do they need and what is required, and we can respond to those challenges.
Thank you, Charles. Varnava, considering that the price of oil and gas remains at relatively low levels, and oil and gas companies incurred huge losses during the last couple of years, is there still enough capital to invest in our region? In other words, are companies still willing to invest in today's low price environment?
Well, I can talk about ExxonMobil in two ways. ExxonMobil here for Cyprus and ExxonMobil globally. Actually, ExxonMobil globally have just announced their capital expenditure for 2018, which is higher than 2017. So they are ramping up exploration and production activities globally. So in spite of the price of oil, exploration and the production expenditures are increasing. For Cyprus, Stavros, let me remind you that we did bid for offshore block 10 mid-2016. The price of oil at that time was lower than now. So, and that's why I showed the charts before. We have a long-term view of things. These projects are projects for 30, 40, 50 years. So we don't base our investment decisions on the price of the day. We have a longer-term view of things, and that's how we based our decisions.
Thank you, Varnava. Indeed. Panayiotis, what in your opinion are the drivers for international market players to turn their interest to Cyprus? What are the benefits of using Cyprus, in your opinion?
Well, apart from the traditional drivers that we know operating from an EU environment in a transparent and safe manner, ease of doing business, infrastructure, excellent labor force, multilingual, legal, financial services, ports, airports. Apart from all these, I would say we have a strong maritime cluster. And the people in this room here, I mean, how many of these people have traveled? They're all local. So it proves that we have a strong shipping community, and it's easy to do business in this area. If you go to a restaurant on a weekday, you will see a ship manager serving his ship owner. You will see a supply company next table, and at the end of the day, you will see that all the people in the restaurant are coming from the shipping cluster. Apart from that, I would like to also stress the tonnage tax system that we need to preserve, if not improve. Of course, for the offshore exploitation, there will be some prerequisite to qualify. However, it's something that we should focus on.
Thank you, Panayiotis. George, talking about the import of gas for the purpose of power generation, can Cyprus meet the target of January 2020, after which the EU will be imposing heavy penalties on emissions from power generation?
Thank you, Stavros. Just to brief people what has been happening over the last years in Cyprus, there were 4 efforts to import LNG in Cyprus, to convert it, to gasify in order to use it for power generation. This time, I think we cannot afford a fifth failure, simply because there will be serious penalties on emissions placed on power generation, and this is something which the government has become very sensitive over the last months. What we see, there are different ways of reducing emissions, of course, in power generation. However, the best is to use cleaner products, and the cleaner product, the one clean product that we can use is the burning natural gas. Of course, in a country where we talk a lot about offshore findings of natural gas, and we haven't seen anything on the ground as yet, but we are optimistic that we will see it sometime shortly being commercialized. We believe that the way forward is the solution that Panayiotis referred to, and Varnavas as well, about the natural gas being the one product that is clean, and we see quite a lot of growth in that market sector. The expectation for the next couple of months is that we will see DEFA. DEFA is the public company for natural gas, inviting a tender to import LNG and regasifying it on a floating vessel, which we call FSRU. FSRU is a floating supply regasification unit. Our facilities in VTTV and the offshore jetty that we have there can be very quickly converted into a place where we can keep the FSRU berth, and then we get an LNG carrier supplying the FSRU next to it, and we gasify the product and we push it towards the power station, which sits exactly next to our terminal for burning. So in answering your question, Stavros, yes, it is possible. It has to be done this time. We cannot afford any failure, simply because we don't want to see on the consumer bill, electricity bill, to be doubling or getting 3 times what we pay today. And of course, as you know, the importance of electricity, keeping it low as cost, very much relates to the economy of the country, which is the most important thing these days. Thank you.
Thank you, George. I would now like to open the discussion and ask whether there are any questions from the floor. Please raise your hand, and somebody will bring to you the microphone. Are there any questions from the floor?
I have a question for Mr. Theodossiou. Assuming the efforts of ExxonMobil succeed, and I hope they will, what are the prevailing views for the transfer of this gas to Europe?
Very good question. Thank you. There are a number of commercialization options for Cyprus gas, but all depends on quantities. Our lead option would be an LNG plant in Cyprus, pipe it to Cyprus, liquefy it, and then export it. But that needs enough quantities to make the project viable and feasible. Because a project like that would cost about $12 to $13 billion. So it needs enough quantities which Cyprus doesn't have yet. So that's why the next year, the exploration activities of the next year will be important towards that option. Now, could be other options as well. Could be pipe to Egypt, could be pipe to Europe, and could be liquefied on seashore through a floating LNG and then exported, or a basket of those options. But everything depends on quantities, on quality, and a few other technical parameters to make those projects more or less viable. Again, it depends on quantities. Like we hear a lot about the EastMed. EastMed, it's an expensive project, but it could be feasible depending on quantities. So it needs adequate quantities in order to justify that project. So again, this year would be crucial.
Thank you, Varnava. A question from Mr. Stavros. Yes, George. Yes.
I just wanted to add to this, to your question on the following that what is best is your question. Best, it depends technically best or geopolitically best, simply because the two, they can be in conflict. You realize that, especially now with the ENI vessel being blocked by Turkey, you understand that best is a very subjective, let's say, term. So my opinion had always been that gas findings can be very toxic in a region. And especially if it's a region that is heavy with politics, it can be even more toxic. And you have to be very careful. So if your question is about technical solution, I can give you the answer. If it's geopolitics, then I cannot give you the answer, I'm afraid. Okay, then it's Varnavas.
Thank you, George. I didn't want to touch on that, but you did. Please, a question from Mr. Stavros.
Yes, from what I followed through this project in Cyprus, which is going on for many years now, from what I gather, I just want to ask you to clarify, it seems the preferred option has been the transportation by compressed gas. And I understand that you can't really even contemplate using pipelines. It's because the subsurface, I think from what I gather, it goes to about 2,000 or 3,000 meters in most areas. And then you've got over 2,000 meters of subsoil. And also the actual the whole computational, the whole nature of the seabed in this particular area is not conducive for having any form of pipeline which won't deteriorate or won't break over the years. And besides that, to go and cope with the seabed, which is so erratic, it would be a massive amount of costing to contemplate on pipelines. And the pipelines, as you remember years ago, there have been all kinds of schemes, had kind of fancy terminologies like Eastern, had these very various terms or names behind them. But from what I gather, I just wanted to clarify, is the pipeline option still there, or do you think that you're going to go for compressed gas? And secondly, would you contemplate with the joint ventures and the cooperation which you've had with Egypt and Israel and etc., and also Greece for that matter, would you contemplate Cyprus being a hub for Europe?
If I get the question, I think all options are on the table, still on the table, and the government is working hard the pipeline option. I think they got money from the European Union to go ahead with feasibility study, so that's on the table. And but equally, the liquefied, I would call it, instead of compressed option, is still on the table, subject to adequate quantities. The rule of thumb is that if you pipe the gas to a country, liquefy it, and then export it, the benefit to the GDP is 3 times versus just pipe it out. So that's why this is one of our lead options, and it gives you more independence. But I wouldn't rule out any other options at this point.
Thank you, Varnavas. Please, yes.
It's just one more question, sorry. I'm very friendly with a guy called Christodoulou, who happened to be one of the researchers based in Greece, and also for the government. Now, he's mentioned on various occasions, and I think this is very encouraging for Cyprus, is that the gas reserves, the known gas reserves, and there's always a bit of a hidden question as to what gas reserves are actually there. But the word has it that the gas, or the oil and gas, the energy supply of the East Mediterranean is sufficient to accommodate the entire energy requirements of Europe for the next 100 years. True or false?
If I knew the answer to that, I would be a billionaire. I don't. I mean, I will give you some global statistics. Out of the 3 exploration projects, out of the 3 holes we are drilling, 2 are dry. So nobody can tell today, before drilling, what's out there. So let's wait for this year to pan out before we answer that question.
Thank you, Varnavas. In the interest of time, I will allow one more question as long as it is not addressed to Varnavas.
On behalf of the mission to seafarers, I would like to thank DPWorld and Eurogate not being here today, that you have managed, after the ports got privatized, to give access to the seafarers, mission to seafarers again. You know, it has been closed for all the time. Now it's open again. Thank you very much for this. On behalf of all the seafarers, keep on doing a good job in your ports.
Thank you. Perhaps if we can have...
Can I say on to
yes,
that
yes.
point? It's a very important facility, and it has some challenges, to be honest, hosting it in the port from a health and safety perspective. And I believe it is actually upon us all within the Cyprus community and the shipping community to support that facility in the port. And we should come together and really make it something world-class and something to be proud of in hosting these ladies and gentlemen who are working aboard the vessels.
Thank you, Charles. George, perhaps a final statement, closing remark?
Just a closing remark from me is that we need, given what is happening at this point in time in Cyprus, which is energy and the gas findings has become a fashion, we need to keep calm and keep going. That's the message that I wanted to give generally, simply because we do not need to be impatient. Just to give you an idea of what is happening, what has happened in other countries, the neighboring country of Israel. They have been searching for decades in order to have the Tamars and the Leviathans these days that they are about to be commercialized, I mean, after 20 and 25 years. And Varnavas, by giving us every 3 wells, the 2 are dry, you can understand that the probabilities are on the low side sometimes. Even if it's 1 to over 3, which is 33%, it's on the high side in my opinion still. However, technology is developing. So as a closing remark, we have to be patient. We have not to be using this as a subject for politics. We need to keep low profile, below the radar screen, and progress. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think we have reached the end of this session. I would like to thank all the panelists for their interesting and insightful remarks and for their positive contribution to the discussion, and wish them every success in their future endeavors. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So now we have the